Hello again, and welcome back for another Facebook Live conversation with Presbyterian Outlook. My name is Jessie Littlejohn. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the social media producer for Presbyterian Outlook. And with me today, I have the joy and the privilege of being with my colleagues from National Capital Presbytery, who, for those of you who don't know, covers part of Northern Virginia, all of Washington, D.C., and parts of Maryland as well. Joining me, I have the Reverend Tara Spooler McCabe, who is the Director of Congregational Development and Mission at National Capital, where she has been serving for over 2 decades now, and has served and is serving in various capacities, not only around our presbytery, but is a name that is known throughout our denomination as well. And her heart's blood is to help our churches grow and to spread the vitality and transformative love of Jesus for all who need it, which is for all of us. I also am very excited to be joined by Elder Shawnee McElwain, who is a ruling elder in the PCUSA, specifically at Faith Presbyterian Church in National Capital. She's also the social media coordinator for National Capital Presbytery, as well as holding about 15,000 other hats around the denomination, around our presbytery. And you probably are also very familiar with her writing, as she is a friend to and frequent contributor to that Presbyterian Outlook. If you haven't read her stuff, go through our archives on our website. Make sure you search Shawnee's name and just take some time to enjoy a good and holy word from her. I'm thankful for both of you for being willing to make time in your schedule to chat with me. Most recently, the Presbyterian Outlook a couple weeks ago put out an article about how national capital churches are responding to the show of force, of military force and police force in our nation's capital, in Washington, D.C. And I know that for us on social media and on our website, this article gained a fair amount of momentum, which is, not what it's all about, but it's good that people are paying attention to it. But this isn't just about momentum. It's not just about views. And this is more than a story. It's more than an article. This is life right now, for you all, for both of you. And for many in our presbytery and in this area. And so to just sort of start us off with, an easy question, it's our responsibility as the body of Christ to move and to act when we see injustice happening, when we see harm being done around us. And so for both of you, whoever wants to go first, it doesn't matter to me. How do you see or feel or understand the gospel calling the church to respond to what's happening right now in DC, specifically with this increase in force and military and police surveillance, but also just, this is happening in a lot of different places. But how is the gospel called? What is God calling us to do right now? That's my question.
I'm going to defer to Tara first to start off.
This is the gift and the curse of being really good colleagues and friends with one another. Because that was not the way I was going to. Not because I'm scared. I'm not scared of this question.
Right.
As Presbyterians, I do though really rely on alongside laity leadership, and so I think that's the gift that probably Shawnee and I will also display here. But I mean, with the macro question, for me, it always is specifically where's the local compelling calling in as a church. And being Presbyterians, this is when I take all of that we know, we're connectional, we're all ministers, we are part of the bigger witness of Jesus Christ. So of that big witness, then my responsibility is how I am responding locally. And yes, we're in National Capital. Yes, we're in Washington, D.C. area. So there's already a macro lens around us. And I think, and I want to be very clear about this in responding to this specific question. We're already locale-wise under a macro lens, and people tend to respond in their local calling or their local presence in a macro way or an expectation of a macro lens. And I want us to always be checking ourselves and making sure we're doing it locally, because it's already going to be identified as a macro. And I hope that's not too abstract, because it is essential that in leadership and in ministry leadership, we are able to check ourselves outside, making sure I'm not doing only a macro response, or I'm only listening to the macro conversation, because that is going to be a crap show for a while. Like, this is a marathon right now, and it is different. So as a leader, I have to make sure then, your eye is always around the macro, but I am responsible and compelled to local community and local congregations who are feeling the pressure of that macro, right? So as a church, we need to be doing, I'll just be very clear to my colleagues right now, we need to be doing the most amazing, intentional, strategic, delegated pastoral care presence that we have ever done before. And I said delegated in there. I'm not talking about being the saving pastor, right?
Yeah.
But we have got to lead with on the ground, outside of our churches, pastoral care that is very direct, it is intentional, and it is responding to the person. It is responding to the group of people with the ache, right? So I feel that the gospel, Jesus teaches us that every time he's in a crowd and he notices the one. We benefit from those stories, right? Anytime he's in a macro moment of being on trial, he is still focused on the one. Anytime he's in a macro crucifixion, he is still focused on the person, right? So that is something that, as a spiritual leader, I need to be checking myself and noticing, am I leading front and forward the church in that way? Shawnee.
Can you give me the question one more time?
What do you feel that the gospel is calling the church to do, and how they're to respond right now?
Right. Okay. So for me, I look at scripture as living and active. I think it's also in one of those scriptures, it says that the word is living and active. And so when I hear scripture like do justice, walk humbly, love mercy, like, so what does that mean from this macro that Tara has beautifully outlined? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for the person next to me in the pew? What does that mean? And so it always becomes tangible because it becomes so personal, right? And so when I wake up one morning and my 17-year-old is getting her makeup done for senior pictures, and then I had this pit in my stomach that I was like, okay, we're under siege, so this is what you need to do as you make your way up to your school, because she goes to school uptown. So if you are familiar with DC proper, I live east of the river, and my daughter goes to school like Columbia Heights. That's the metro station she gets off at. If you're familiar with DC, you understand that Columbia Heights is mostly brown people. Her school is 70% Latina.
Wow.
And so, so it hit, ICE hit home. Yeah. It hit home since January, right? It hit home in March when the same kid leaves out of her building and sees her classmate's parent being detained in handcuffs.
Mm-hmm.
And her classmate like screaming, what am I supposed to do? I have 4 sisters, right? And so when you see it, I think a lot of times, especially good Presbyterians, we don't always see the conflict in our face, right? We hear about it, but we don't always see it like vividly in our face, where you're going to have to decide what side of history you want to be on.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to engage like you, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Right?
You cannot unsee
once
that.
you see it, you and if the scripture is speaking to you the way it speaks to me, and I believe that's how the Holy Spirit is working, then you have to do something. And I have learned over the course of my existence, in my lived experience, that protest and resistance and doing something doesn't always have to look like getting a picket sign. It doesn't always have to look like marching. It can just be present, which is why I have thoroughly appreciated the ministry of presence.
Yeah. So
right?
let's talk about that. I don't mean to interrupt you, Shani, but DC right now is, it started a few months ago. It's obviously been, the ministry of presence has been around for a while, but with federal workers having to come back, everybody being forced to be in person, national capital churches. I want to say a church in Laurel. Was it Chris Deacon that was like, we need to do something?
It was absolutely Chris Deacon. Yeah.
That said, we need to show up. We need to be present. We need to show our love and support. And so pastors and lay leaders from around national capital showed up at metro stops, bus stops across the DMV with signs of support, just not for anything else, but to be there, to be physically present, and to be a witness that said we're here. And so I want to talk about what a ministry of presence looks like right now, but I specifically also want to name, how do we do this in a way that is not performative?
Yeah. And I really appreciate you naming that. I really appreciate, because that's what I was like, yes, let's answer that. Let's train that. Let's integrate that in our bodies, right? That's the check yourself within spiritual leadership. Because the questioning of the principalities and so forth, like Chris Deacon, our colleague, brought that forward out of his frustration of what was being celebrated for that weekend in June of a military birthday celebration. But also I added, and also a lot of No Kings protests. And there was a witness for that. There was a time for that. And he was lifting up, but what we can counter with for our members and for the people in our communities who are having to go back to work after that weekend, and what it means to carry that spiritually with your souls. So a ministry of presence is not denying when we need to ring and clang and line up, and maybe people are there with picket signs, but you're in a collective voice, right? It's loud, it's disruptive in that way. It is also jarring when it is 2 by 2 with signs that read, here with prayers for you, grateful for your work, grateful for your service, we see you. It is when people were coming up the escalator. This is a ministry of presence. They're coming up the escalator. People were intentionally wearing stoles or collars, and they have some signs, but also intentionally, some of us weren't having signs, right? We have open hands. And when you read a sign next to you that says, here with prayers for you, you better be ready to have somebody coming forward and asking for prayers. Yeah. That's the intentionality. Because at a rally protest, that's probably not going to happen in that way, right? It doesn't say it doesn't ever, but it's different. The intentionality is to identify, I guess, back to that personal, the one-to-one, more of a private witness in a public way, but also in a group personal witness. I mean, it was palpable for watching people coming up an escalator and they see people like me or like Shawnee or somebody else, and they see us with a sign and they're starting to walk away, but they quickly did a double take because there was a word that was very different than what they assumed was going to be there. Whether they agree with it or not, there was a word that was different. And one of our other colleagues, Maddie Nabinger, he lifted up that after his most recent time doing this, he realized that even with that double take and someone would whisper and you could see, we know we're spiritual based people. When you see somebody then look directly at you and you see it in their eyes, they're saying thank you with grief, right? Or they're saying thank you with amazing gratitude because they never expected to be seen in that way. And Maddie was able to lift up just in that moment, me or this moment, those words, I'm in their day now. Yeah. Like God is in their day right now. The Spirit is in the day. That's called a ministry of presence. And the biggest part, as Chris named it one time, we are coming to them, the others, the people. We're not waiting for them to come into our churches. I have also recognized that in I realized the ministry of presence takes a while for my lips. So I came up with this analogy, Jesse, when you were asking this. We're the mops, and there's this other program out there called Mops, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like mops here, we're the mop. Like we really are needing to work and clean up this decaying grind that is so dark. Like we have to be the light. We have to be the refresher here. And so we're cleaning up what people are expecting to see in order so that they can encounter that new fresh breath, that resurrection. I just think that this has, and I'm witnessing it being, well, I'm going to stop there. Yeah, I'm going to stop there.
But Sean, I want to hear because you said you really appreciated this, like the ministry.
I did, because it didn't feel like, you asked how can you show up without being performative, right? And I think when you let go of outcomes, right? So you're going in there to just be there, right? You're letting go of outcomes. You are not centering yourself, right? You're not going there for praise and, wanting to be thanked, right? Yeah. You're just, and you are, and I think it's important to recognize that, where you have privilege, where you don't, and be able to listen, right? That, part of being in the presence of people is not always having an answer. I think, when we are coming in to try to help or assist, we want to fix something right away. But unfortunately, what we are fighting is not a right away fixable thing, right? And it requires us to humble ourselves and just be there for that moment, right?
That's right.
Don't think about what could happen or what if we did it this way, or be there in that moment. And I think you will kind of lose that desire or for it to feel like performative based.
That is the biggest reorientation that I have found, in one sense, while I'm talking through and doing some micro trainings all the time around this. And I will say, being intentional of being there for that moment with that ache and grief, and that does not discount how you can be effective in the fuller sense, I want to say, of evangelism. Because of the few folks that are going to come directly to me or to my colleague and say, yes, could you please specifically pray for me? And I say, what is it that you would like to be lifted up? Can you please tell me your name? but also then the next question is, thank you, and what church are you from? Mm-hmm. Our ministers, you better be ready to tell them. You better be ready to evangelize in that, because as Maddie said, you're now in their day. And it is a privilege. That's the privilege. I've just been invited into their day. And so I want our churches in that ministry of presence, you know what your focus is, you know what the calling and the need is, and you can also extend that and be ready in a way. But please don't make that be your first question. Do you go to church? I just always feel I just always feel I need to say that at some point, just because that's not why I'm there.
Right.
And people are drawn to the pastoral care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is a completely different comparison, but at the same time, I can see some resonance of, that's how I feel when churches and ministry members show up to Pride in the summer of, I'm not going there so you can see like, oh, we're this affirming congregation, you should come to my church. But I am there so that you can see that there is a different narrative than what's out there. And how can I be here for you today? What do you need? And if something else evolves from that, great. But otherwise, for one moment, this person who had been treated so poorly by the church saw something different. And like Maddie said, like, we're part of their day right now. I don't want to ignore the very real tension that exists, that Shawnee, that you named in the article, that there's always been a military force, there's always been police presence, there's always been curfews, there's always been racial profiling that has existed in this country, in DC. A lot of this isn't new, it's just magnified. And that you named specifically in the article, and I don't think that we can just pass over it. That you feel like this in many ways is targeting Black youth and brown youth in this city. And now with the Supreme Court ruling that came out, I want to say yesterday, that basically gives carte blanche for police officers, military officers, ICE officers to racially profile people and say, well, you look like this description, so we're gonna pull you now. How your experience of this, Shawnee, is very uniquely different than my experience as a white person, or as Tara's experience, or many of your colleagues in National Capital Presbytery. So like, I don't want to like put you on the spot. I don't want to like do any sort of like trauma porn or anything like that. But like, this is a very different experience for people of color, for Black women, for Black men, for Black youth. How do you need us to show up in a way how do you need us to be with you in this?
I'm going to start with something funny, because this is heavy, right? But seriously, I love my colleagues. I love my white friends. I also don't need y'all to send me every single clip of Donald Trump. I don't need that. I don't know why. Yes. And so I was making a joke about that yesterday, because I'm like, why did this person send me this? I don't need to hear what he said or what he didn't say. Aside from that, it has, I think I wrote a Substack recently, or I don't know. I've been writing to free myself, but since 2015, so we're 10 years in, right? Mm-hmm. Make America Great Again was always about, quote unquote, putting BIPOC people, Indigenous people in their place. Mm-hmm. It's always been about that. It was a dog whistle from the beginning. Now, many people in 2015 didn't think it was going to be so serious. Mm-hmm. right? Many people were like, you know, it's just a campaign slogan. No, it's a mandate. And now it's being played out. We see it, right? And so when instantly when the curfew and the at that press, when I listened to that press conference, I became so angry because I was like, this was all part of the plan. It's all been part of the plan, right?
Yeah.
Let's first introduce ICE. And now, because DC is not a state and we don't have state rights, right? You know, it's easier. We are a guinea pig, if you will, to see how far you can test your power.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when you have a city that is overwhelmingly liberal, overwhelmingly and very diverse, right? And so of course, you know, it's very hard to not see the writing on the wall. And I think that it is important for communities to build their power, because like this type of thing can't last forever. You can't be that, like, this threat to democracy can't. I hope everybody knows that like you're next. If you're not the target today, you will be the target tomorrow. Right? And I think it's important for us to recognize that and call it out whenever we see it. I mean, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's definitely a target on, because you come in, over policing has never worked to combat crime.
Mm-hmm.
You want to end crime, you end poverty, but that's not going to happen because poverty is big business. But if you want to address the crime, you address poverty first. And when over policing, when you have, look, I am a metro rider. I have taken courses in mediation, conflict management, how to resolve an issue. I live in an urban area. I know about self-control. And even then, and even in my age of wisdom, right? I still was so angry when this daggone, I can't even remember if it was a Metro police officer or if it was U.S. Marshals or if it was some law enforcement in my face like this.
Mm-hmm.
Did you pay your fare? First of all, you're in my personal space. So imagine that happening with someone who doesn't have self-control, who might have just lost their job, who's just trying to go to work, who we don't know what people's breaking point is. And that and I think it's all calculated. I think they know this. I think people who because you're looking for crime. The first 2 weeks that we were under siege, that's what I'm going to call it. They were looking for crime. They were driving into neighborhoods. Last weekend, my daughter was at a party, after football party at a friend's house right down the street. They're outside. The party moved outdoors because it's still hot, right? These teenagers weren't doing anything. They were hanging outside. She calls me on FaceTime because DEA agents are in the parking lot of this complex. I say, just come home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Just come home. Right? Harassing people.
Right.
Like,
yep.
It's very intentional. And that's why I do want to shout out like Free DC Project. that's doing Know Your Rights trainings for youth and young people, because they do need to know their rights, right?
Yep.
You do need to know that you can record people, right? When they tell you don't record me, no, you can record them. You can ask for their badge number. You can get their name. That's your right. One of the things I've always had to talk with my kids, but one of the things that I keep emphasizing is the fact that, when you're underage, they always let you call your parent, right? Right. And I tell my kids, and this is a privilege that I don't get to have.
Right.
My kids know not to call me first. Ask for a lawyer.
Right.
That's your right.
Yeah.
And and I wish that I had a lawyer on retainer, right? I wish that we had a family lawyer, right? But we don't. But that's okay. You call a lawyer first, and then your lawyer will call me.
Yeah.
Right? Because we don't have the privilege. We already saw it, the Central Park 5.
That's right.
The youngest was 14.
Yeah.
Right? So history teaches me how to now teach my kids. And I'm not teaching out of fear. I'm teaching out of what we've already been through, how we got over. Like, that's how I'm teaching. Because if you don't, then because the goal is to get home at night.
That's right. That's 100%.
That's the goal.
That's it.
Yeah. And so I think what I want to just sort of highlight, and I'm trying to summarize this in a way that that doesn't minimize anything that was just said, but like, for our white colleagues, yes, show up, but show up without expectation or like the desire to be seen, but just be present. But also show up educated. Show up with the knowledge of like, this is what I need to do if this happens. This is the history of what I'm walking into. And don't come in naively thinking that everything is magically going to be okay.
Right.
Because like Shani said, I mean, it's not just sunshines and rainbows, you're showing up with a picket sign. Like, there's a happening. And so, Tara, I don't want to interrupt.
Well, because this is where Shani and I have been doing a lot of like direct conversation, because we check in with one another a lot, specifically around these pieces, and it is because we love our colleagues. And a piece here is, as a white colleague, I and it can happen in a myriad of ways, but I also need to make sure I'm being invited, and that shows up in different ways. And I think we should talk about what are authentically the ways to be invited, because when we aren't invited and we just show up, or we blast something with an assumption, I'm not wrong with what I'm calling out as the injustice, but I might do some harm with what I'm saying we all need to be doing right now, right? Like that's where as a white colleague, I have to take very seriously what it means in my authentic relationships and checking in with my local community partnerships. Shani lifted up one of them. Like we have ways that we can authentically check in and say, where do you need me most right now? How can I be most helpful or relevant in this moment? I think in the aftermath, whatever that can look like at a certain point, I have a dream, and I'm going to put it out in the universe now. But with the incredible witnessing that is going on right now, and the collective connections that are being made right now within our own Presbyterian, our colleagues, I am hopeful that there will now be a way to authentically invite and connect with colleagues outside of parts of DC who, when there are, because they are still, when there are shootings, when there are evictions going on in these pockets of DC at the regular, that we can be invited to show up in other ways of ministry and presence, because there is a disease of authority that's been going on in DC for a very long time. And churches don't know how to show up in those spaces that they aren't already located in. And it's been hard to teach that in the absence of those relationships. So my dream is that there is a community through invitation that is able to show up alongside community members in these areas, because we still had 2 to 4 teens shot during that first week of school in Congress Heights. And so, I mean, it's, and these are aches that families, this is grief that's going on. And thanks be to God, something bigger didn't happen in one sense because of the over militarization that's going on. But the other, like, crap show of it, none of all these extra National Guards were there for any of that. So nobody got their gun taken away from them. You know what I mean? Like there's some big gaps here. And Jesus is compelling me to see it in a particular way so that it is most effective for those, the widow, the orphan, the grieving, right? Like that's what we can name.
Yeah. And I want to wrap us up soon, but you called out, or you shouted out Free DC, and I want to shout out specifically Samantha Davis, who is a part of the PCUSA, works very closely with REWIM, the Racial Equity, Women and Inclusion Intercultural Ministries within PCUSA. She's very involved in Free DC. The Office of Public Witness also is generally very responsive when things are happening in DC. And then National Capital Presbytery, don't sleep on us. There is a training happening on the 23rd of September at 3:00 at National Presbyterian Church about what it is and what it means to have this ministry of presence that Tara and our General Presbyter, John Molina Moore, will be leading. So if you're in the area and you want to register and show up for that, you can find Tara's email on thepresbytery.org. You can reach out to her about what it is to be involved. But I want to go back to what you said, Tara, about that ministry of one, that this is happening in DC, but it's happening in your local communities. Like you said, Shani, like if it's not happening now, it might be happening next. And I want to lift up the way, obviously I'm biased because I'm part of National Capital Presbytery, but I do appreciate the way that our churches in DC, in Maryland and Virginia are showing up in their own local context as well. And the way that they're at their own metro stops every weekend or every Monday, showing federal workers where they are, showing up at schools and letting kids know that they're
showing up at ICE detention centers.
Showing up at detention centers. Arlington Presbyterian Church is doing the ministry of the stumble stickers, where every time somebody is physically stolen off the streets, they are going to mark it so that you cannot ignore that this is happening under your nose, that this is the physical witness. And so there are lots of different ways that your ministry of presence can be magnified and seen, and that you can be a witness. I'm thankful so much for the two of you and for the ways that you, in the midst of it all, continue to be that light in this world, that you continue to be and show the transformative love of Christ. And that everywhere in DC and everywhere that you go, you are a part of somebody's day, and because of that, so is God, and the light of Christ is as well. Go ahead, Shani.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to say something about because I think the federal government as a whole gets a bad rap just in general, right? And I want to go a little, and I think I'm saying it right if I say I want to go a little I don't want to do macro. I don't want to do big government. I want to do the GS10, right? The GS5. These are the people we're talking about. Your everyday people, faithful people who really, were probably in high school or in college when they heard the replay of JFK saying, ask what, don't, you know, I'm going to paraphrase, ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Yep.
Many of us grew up with that mantra in the back of our head. And you come to DC because you want to make a difference, right?
Yeah.
You want to work in civil service because of that being instilled in you. And you take this oath. I don't know if a lot of people realize that when you become a federal employee, you take an oath, no matter what grade you are on, whether you are in admin or janitorial. If you are a government employee, not a contractor, but a federal government employee, you take this oath to defend the Constitution.
Mm.
And so when you target regular everyday people, it's like going into a school and just taking out all of the teachers. It's like going into any type of job, and these are people that are in most cases bipartisan through and through. It doesn't matter who is sitting in the White House. It doesn't matter what party has the majority in Congress. These are regular people trying to do the job that they took an oath for.
Yeah.
And I feel like that narrative gets missed so often because we want to put people in this political box of red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican. And I've had enough of that. Because at the end of the day, these are people that just want to do right by themselves, their faith, and then the people that they're trying to serve.
Yep. Amen, Shani. I think that's where it is very personal to us in the DMV, right? Because this is all of our churches. I mean, pastors and sessions right now have people who do not feel safe anymore at multiple levels that were never there before. And it's because things that you counted on and that you were proud of, even with aspects of your employment or aspects of the way you understand and know and trust the government to be. And that now is a blanket of unsafety. It's not just anger, it's actually unsafety. And so supporting people who are outside of the DMV, or God bless, we're now going to be, needing to be supportive to Chicago and to neighbors in California. Like a piece of that is that we need to take very seriously how painful this is for their local people. And that is going to be about, from afar, we're here to say, you are doing absolutely everything you can. It's just not going to hit the way that you want it to. But I will tell you right now, it has mattered significantly for these individuals that our people and our colleagues are meeting and seeing. Because you're also then your vulnerability and ministry of presence, you get on public transportation to get from point A to point B. You just don't take an Uber. Like, there's a way to put yourself there. And you're carrying a sign, and I'm not holding it like this. I'm probably putting it in between my legs, on the metro. But that has been when real conversation has happened and been invited to. And so I'm just very much holding our colleagues in these other parts of the country right now who are being threatened. It's not going to stop just because a timeline has coming up in DC. We all know it's not going to stop.
No, and they're voting today. They're voting today.
We have congregations who are missing people from their churches.
Yeah.
And that's when I cry the most. I know it's happening everywhere, but it's our churches who are missing their people who may have been unhoused or may have been brown or black, but that's not the point. They're missing their people. And it is the point that they are being targeted because of their status in society. And I just, we have that now. We are carrying that. We need to address that.
Yeah. I'm so thankful for both of you. We could keep talking. I want to just end with a note from, hold on one second, baby. From Reverend Dr. Rodney Sadler, who did a Blessed Are the Peacemaking webinars with us a few months ago, where he said basically you don't shift ideas with guns, you don't shift them with fists, you shift ideas about how we do this by engaging, by developing relationships and fostering new ways to imagine the world in which we live. And I'm so thankful for both of you for continuing to help us imagine a world that is more Christ-centered and justice-filled, and truly what the restoration of God's kingdom could and should be. So thank you both for joining me this afternoon, and for your continued presence in National Capitol. If you all want to read the article, which you should, I'm posting it in the comments. It's on our website. Please go read it. Please reach out to Tara or Shani via the Presbytery website for how you can support National Capitol Presbytery churches, as well as how to be a ministry of presence in your own area. So thank you all. I'm going to end the stream and come back September 24th because Shani will be back for another Facebook Live, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye, Charlie. Bye-bye.